Okay, so welcome back to the channel, and today is going to be a slightly different video. We're going to take a break from doing the barn and get on and do some tidying up around the house. I have ordered the parts to do the roof on the barn, or most of the bits to do that, but I've got to wait for them to be delivered. And while we're waiting, the whole garden is just growing. It's that time of year where everything just goes berserk. So I have actually mowed the lawn a couple of days ago, and I thought about the strimming, but I thought I just can't face it because I do actually have a petrol strimmer at the moment, and it's really old and it does work, but the wire feed at the bottom doesn't work. Every time it breaks, I have to unbolt the spool effectively and get a bit more string out and then bolt it all back together, and it's an absolute pain to do. But so I thought I'd treat myself to a new one, and reading reviews, it kind of makes sense to go cordless because it's just so much easier. I haven't got to worry about getting it going. You just plug the battery in and away it goes. Being the newer one, it's got the bump type spool at the bottom, so I can just feed the wire as I'm using it, and it'll just make life a lot easier, and I'm more likely to do the strimming. To be honest, I rarely ever do the strimming when I mow the lawn because it's been such a pain. Now, I will keep the petrol one, but I'll probably end up putting a blade on it and use it more of as a like for heavier stuff. Okay, so it is a couple of days later, hence change of clothing. Unfortunately, it got very windy the other morning when I was trying to film this, and you wouldn't have been able to hear much over the wind noise from the camera. Basically picks up the wind, but not me. So this is the version that we've got. This is the DCMST561N. Now, according to the DEWALT website, this is the latest version of the strimmer, or this is the latest version of the 18-volt strimmer. Obviously, they still do the 56-volt versions, and they're a lot bigger and a lot more powerful, and people will tell you they are better, which they undoubtedly are, but it's horses for courses. I don't need a big strimmer just for doing bits and pieces around the garden. I'm not going to be out there cutting the grass with it in the field, because it's not what I want it for. If you're a landscaper, it makes more sense to get a big version, but for me, this is going to be perfect. I already have the batteries, and it's the cheapest way of doing it for me. So we'll open the box up and show you what we got. So that's it out of the box. Obviously, instruction manual, don't need that. So this is it out of the box. Obviously, now this folds in half. Now, the earlier version of these clipped together, and it really wasn't a very good system at all, and it would basically start to wobble in the middle. So to put this out, just clip it together and then use this clip, and it locks it into place, and it's solid. There's no movement in that at all, and it's ideal. The older version basically had like a sleeve, and over time it would just start to flex and wear, and it would start moving around. So if you're going to buy one of these, I would definitely recommend getting this version, the later version. If you get the earlier versions, and the earlier versions are still for sale, but they just don't work as well. So we'll get this put together. So the biggest difference with the later one and the earlier one, obviously this part, but if you're not sure, the battery on the newer one goes in basically horizontal, whereas the battery in the older version goes in vertically. So we're going to get a battery in a second and we'll stick it in, but we're going to put this together quick. This is the guard that goes around the base. We're going to get that installed, and it actually comes with an Allen key and some screws, which is handy. And then this is the handle. So the only disadvantage with the newer one, as far as I can see, is because of this mechanism in the middle. It's more or it's less flexible as far as where you can put the handle, because the handle can only go up to here, which makes it a bit nose heavy. This put the handle here, it's too far, and here it's just not quite far enough. So we'll get this put together and we'll see how we get on with it. So pull this out here. Allen key. You've got the Allen key and a few screws, which is just handy to stop me going on. So it's got an Allen key and a few screws, but the screws are posi drive, so I couldn't get a screwdriver. I'll be back now. So, assuming that these screws are for this, because the handle, yeah, the handle will, all right. So that's what the Allen key is for. So we'll put this up here. Get in there first. Get these screws and put them in. Okay, so that's simple enough, just the 4 screws there. Take that bit of cardboard off there, that's like a metal blade that trims the trim and line to length. And then pull this up. Okay, so this is the trimmer line itself. So I believe this is a 2mm line. It's not very thick. Hopefully it'll be up to the job. So the head itself is a bump head, so as you bump it, it allows the string to come back out. And then when you load it, you hold this outside piece and it should be able to wind it back in. So that's the bottom basically done. So we'll get the handle put on. I believe the handle goes forwards, give you a bit more room. So again, take these off. So you want this handle as far forward as you can get it, basically, just to help with the balance. Okay, so I'm not really sure how tight to do these up, but I wouldn't go ridiculous on them because it's only into a piece of plastic. It's quite a bit of thread, but you can always tighten them up if they're loose, but once the thread is broken, it's broken. So that'll do for that. So the main difference with the electric ones to the petrol ones, the motor is actually down on the head, and obviously the power unit's up here, whereas with the petrol one you have the motor up here, this end, and then it drives the shaft and then drives the actual head. So you can fold this because there is no shaft in the middle of it, it's just wire, and the wires obviously can be folded, and makes it really good for storage, especially if you needed to take it with you in the car or do something like that. Again, you can just fold it in half and put it away, hang it up, it takes up less space. So just a really neat design, really handy. So put the battery in now. So this is a brand new battery. It's only been cycled probably about half a dozen times at the most. 2023 date and fully charged. So we'll see how long this one lasts. And it just slots in. Like I said, with the later version, this is the newest one they do, the battery goes in horizontally. So it does have a high and low setting, although to be honest, I don't really understand why. Would you actually use it on a lower setting? Personally, I don't think I ever would. And especially as the actual trigger itself is variable speed. So the locking mechanism for the trigger is on there, so you can hold it with your thumb and then pull the trigger. But apparently being variable speed, if you wanted to go slower, you could just let off the trigger a bit. So to me, a bit of a pointless feature, but other than that, I'm really pleased with it. It's just ready to go out the box. You haven't got to mess about with two-stroke oil. You haven't got to mess about trying to get it going, air filter blocking up, fuel filter, whatever. This is just so much easier and simpler. So I'll have a quick tidy up and we'll do some trimming. So just had a quick test there and it worked really well. I'm almost out of battery on this camera, but I'm going to have a strim round tonight and probably tomorrow and just see how long this battery lasts. So this is a 5 amp hour battery, just for reference. So see what sort of usage we can get out of it. Okay, so it's a couple of days later and I have actually managed to get some strimming done in between the showers that we've had, and even now it's looking, in fact it is starting to spit with rain already. But I do want to get this video wrapped up for you, so we'll go through what I found with this machine, both good and bad, and share my thoughts with you. So starting off at the strimmer head itself, the plastic reel spool thing works really well. So I mean, it's quite big and bulky. That's the only thing I would say about it. And obviously it's catching on things, so over time it will get worn and probably need to be replaced. To replace the string, you just need to line up these lines, basically. Where's he on? So yeah, basically you see these lines here. Once these are lined up, you can see straight through that spool, and then you get your string, push it through, and then just wind it up. The bump itself works really well. Give it a fair bump when you're using it, and the string comes out. So that's easy enough to use. The string itself, considering it's only like a 2mm string, is actually fairly strong. This is the DEWALT brand. Obviously it came with the machine, and you can get different types of string. There probably are better ones on the market, but to be honest, I'm no strimmer expert, that's for sure. It worked really well on the garden itself, but I have done the area up there by the garage, and that was really long grass. The only thing that happens with the really long grass is it does get kind of trapped in this area between the head and the motor. But again, it was fairly easy to clear out. Just pull it out and then off you go again. My only real concern is this area here on the motor head gets full of grass. I've already picked this out, but potentially I'm assuming this is to allow the motor to breathe. Obviously the electric motor is here, and this is the gearbox part of it, and it allows this to breathe and not overheat. So if it gets clogged up with grass, over time that's going to heat up and potentially damage the motor. So I would try and keep those clear if you can. Obviously you don't put anything sharp in there, but other than that, the strimmer head works really well. So the big selling point for me to get this model over the previous one is this improved hinge mechanism in the middle, and it's really solidly made. I mean, the actual hinge itself works really well. This side is connected with these 4 bolts and it's solid onto the shaft, and it's great. But unfortunately this side only has this one little bolt here and this screw here, and I'm not really sure what this one is doing, but I'm not sure if you see it, but there is slight play in it. So you see there that it's actually moving. If I turn it on its side, there is actually play there. Now I may be able to tighten this up. I haven't even tried yet, but it's only a slot that tightens up on the shaft, whereas this one has got these 4 bolts. So I don't know why they didn't do this kind of thing on this side. I get that it would have taken up more room again, but then they could have just offset the handle more, which is a bit of a disappointment really, because even though this is obviously the latest model, this has already been out a few years as well. And since this was such a big problem on the other one, I don't know why this hasn't been improved again. The only thing I would say is, although it's possibly handy, birds are going berserk. Birds are nesting in the eaves here in the dairy, so they're very noisy at the moment. The only thing I would say, although this mechanism might be handy for some people, a lot of people aren't going to be bothered with it. I've had it for, like, say, a week now, and I've just, every time I've stored it, I haven't folded it up. I've just put it in the shed, basically. So I would question how sort of essential this piece is, and if it had a solid shaft, it would be stronger, effectively, and would probably last longer. And that is the only thing about this strimmer that I would probably question. Everything else seems to work okay. So overall, really happy with this machine. It's definitely more of a gardener's machine rather than a landscaper's. This garden here is fairly average size, I would think, and it did this no problem, and it's around the side and this piece here. So all on one battery. It lasted about 20 minutes. Like I said, because you're only trimming the edges, you're not doing a great deal. It didn't do that taller grass on the one battery. I had to change the battery when I got around to doing that. But it's not really what it's meant for. So for most people, this is an ideal machine. If you're going to do landscaping, obviously you're going to need a bigger machine anyway, but that's true of pretty much everything. So please remember to hit the like and subscribe button if you can. It does make a big difference to the channel. That's going to be about it for this video. We have actually had the delivery now for the bits for the roof in the barn, and that probably will be the next video, I think. But I'll see you again shortly on the next one.